social media idea for churches and youth ministries, part 3. In this video, I'm going to share with you one of, if not the easiest way to start creating custom social media content for you and your church and your youth ministry, with you, with your leaders, with your students. This is a continuation of the video playlist, which is linked right here. This is part 3 out of 4 of what I do in my 4-part social media strategy for me and my churches. You know, I've been in youth ministry for 14 years, and this is easily the best strategy and the one that we have seen the most traction with, not only creating good custom social media content for our church and our student ministry, but also with adding people to our social media team so that I have less on my plate as the youth pastor to do, and there's more ministry being passed off and handed off to our students. And I'm also going to share with you in this video my 3-part proven 3C formula for adding student volunteers to our social media team. And as always, if you're here on YouTube, don't forget that there are chapters included at the bottom of this video so that you can go ahead and skip around. But my social challenge idea number 3 is called Man on the Street. Now, you don't have to call it Man on the Street, but essentially you've seen these style videos. It's interview style videos where you have someone walking around with a microphone and they're interviewing someone and asking them any sort of question. And the comedy in it, or the interesting part in it, is really just in the person's answers and or in the interaction or in the banter that may or may not go on between the two people. One of the wins that we've seen how we do it in our student ministry is we create 4 to 5 questions for any given night and any given season. So for example, a couple months back, it was back to school. So we did a bunch of back to school sort of themed questions, like what's the worst cafeteria food you've ever had? What's the worst lunch food you've ever eaten? What's your number one thing on your back to school shopping list? And we ask all 5 questions to as many people in that night as we can. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 interviews. And then what you do is you just take one of those questions and you splice up all the answers. You may include them all. You may choose to leave some out if they're not as interesting or as good. And then you can also create just some interesting things in the edit. The power, I believe, on this is the power is done in the edit. And I have found that this video in particular is one that students really enjoy editing. Now, it is a little bit more complicated because if you're doing it in something like Adobe Premiere Pro, you may just end up with a lot of different layers. And if you're not a skilled editor, or if you don't have experience in editing something like this, you may just get turned around. So this one is tougher to hand off to volunteers, which is why in the last video, my 7 questions video, is where I want to encourage students to start. That one seems like easy first kind of starting spot. But this one, students can really let their creativity run wild. And so what we do is we just do 5 different questions seasonally based. And so as this video drops mid-October, you might do some Halloween, you might do some Thanksgiving videos. And so you might do what is the best Halloween candy? What is the worst Halloween candy or thing you've ever gotten in your bucket as you've gone trick-or-treating? What is your least favorite Thanksgiving food? You get to the Thanksgiving table and you see it on the table and you're like, oh man, I can't believe that is being served right now. What are you going to be asking for Christmas? And then what is the worst road trip you've ever taken around Christmas, or something like that, right? There's 5 questions. You ask all 5 of those, and then you ask as many people as you can. You can do this with the gear list linked down below in the template. It's the one that's been included in all of these videos. It's got my Photoshop template for the last 2 videos. It's got gear recommendations. It's got topic recommendations, and you can take those topics and you can use them for 7 questions. You can take them and use them for drafts, or you can take them and curate and curtail them to be working for you in this man on the street style video. Now, go ahead and give me a like if this video so far has provided value, and go ahead and give me a subscribe if this is something that you might think that you might start implementing in your student ministry. But like I said, the power is in the edit. So the more GIFs, B-roll, or sound effects that you can create as people are giving answers, you can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can do one of my favorite resources, and I'll link it down below in the description, is Giphy, Giphy. giphy.com, and we can search gifts there. And I've just sent students there, and they will find gifts to kind of add on screen as people are giving answers. And sometimes so much so that there's like so many gifts on the screen that we don't even see the people like answering the questions. But this is a great way for students to kind of let their creativity run wild. Now, here's the other thing that Man on the Street does. So if you were watching our last two videos, we talked about drafts and we talked about 7 questions. Those are stationary videos. Those often, they take place for us in our studio. If you haven't seen our studio tour, go ahead, check out the link down below for that. But those happen in our studio. Those happen in a different section of the building. The good news about Man on the Street style videos is it forces us to get out of our studio, and it forces us to go be on the streets, go be all throughout the different spaces of our youth ministry. So we have an outdoor sports basketball court, so they may be out there. We have an indoor rec room, they may be in there. We have a cafe, they may be in there, in the lobby or whatever. And so they're much more visible. And here's the good news about the visibility. Once they're visible and once they're doing it, we start to see a drastic uptick in people and their interest level in joining our social media team. They're like, hey, can I do this? Can I help? Can I join? And so one of the markers, one of the values for us and for our student ministry, the Apostle Paul says, you shouldn't be a youth pastor. You shouldn't be the only one doing ministry. You should be handing the work of ministry off to equip the saints for works and acts of service. And so that's our goal, not only just with adults, but also with students as well. And so that needs to be our goal. That needs to be what we are aiming to do. And so as we are growing and building these teams, less and less falls on your plate. You have to create the structure and the scaffolding, and you have to keep that train kind of moving down the tracks. But ultimately, you can hand some of these things off. And this area in particular, student ministry, is something that students actually are interested in doing. No shade, no offense to guest services and holding doors open and greeting people, but students love the opportunity, or at least in general, students love the opportunity to get on camera, be on camera, or run the camera. So with all that being said, here is my proven 3C strategy for building a good student volunteer team. The first C is calendar. Actually calendar it out. And what I mean by that, I just use an Excel template, and I, have like week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. Now, most students get turned around by what any of that means. What is week 1? What is week 2? So if you have typically any given, like let's say your youth night is Wednesday night, any given month, you have 4 Wednesdays in the month. But occasionally you'll have a 5th. And the 5th is what throws everybody off, because if you schedule people once a month, they think they serve every 4. But if there's a 5th, it actually is every 5. Or if they serve every other week, then they may serve every other week, but you throw a 5th in there, and now that messes up when they're landing. And so for clarity, I like to just call it, if you're doing it, every other 1st and 3rd, 2nd and 4th. All right. And then you got to figure out where your 5ths are. So I like to do 1st, 3rd, and 5th. Okay. And I'll just explain to them, hey, if you're a 5th, that means you'll do a 1st, a 3rd, a 5th. That'll feel like every other. But then when it rolls back around to the 1st, you're actually going to do 2 weeks in a row. Just brace for that. Just understand that. Okay. And they're like, oh, okay. They get it in theory. All right. I've even literally pulled up my Google Calendar, and I've showed them like this. When it says August 7th, that's week 1. When it says August 14th, that's week 2. When it says 21st, that's week 3. When it says 28th, that's week 4. And then we go to September, and I'm like, now you try it. In September, which one are the weeks you're serving if you're on week 1 and 3, for example? And like, once they get that understanding, it makes sense. Also, I can recommend some sort of scheduling feature. For my tech team, I use Planning Center Services. For the rest of our team, we use Church Community Builder, which is our church's database. Whatever you use, whatever you have, if you can send some sort of invitation for them to serve, that would be great. But that leads me to my second C in my building a strong volunteer team is contact. How are you going to contact them? See, here's what happens a lot of times in churches is, especially when serving with students, we want students to serve even in our greater teams on our church, like our tech team or our worship team or our greeting team, but we treat them once they get on those teams like adults, and we should start working them towards that. However, in most cases, when you're scheduling adults, you're scheduling them through email. Most students, though they have an email, it's not a regular discipline of them checking it very often, if at all. And so in Planning Center and also Church Community Builder, both of them have integration for text messages. And most students are receiving text messages at this point. And then if students are not, we have to get to their parents, right? And we say, okay, well, you don't have a phone, so I'm going to send this to your parents, and you're going to get notified via your parents, blah, 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 whatever. Now, I handle that on an individual basis with every single student. It's much more than just fill out this form. I'll put you on and I'll schedule you. Like, I have that conversation, let them know you're first and third, and then I get from them what I need in order to contact them effectively. And in my mind, to contact every student effectively, I need to text them. And in both cases, both Planning Center and Church Community Builder, I need to know their cell phone carrier. It's a weird question. Most students know the answer to it. It's like, is it AT&T? Is it Verizon? Is it T-Mobile? Once I put that in, I'm able to schedule them, and they're able to get text message notifications for when they're scheduled. And then the last piece of it, the third C, is conflicts. What do you do when you can't come to church? Set the expectation now. So I say you're scheduled first and third. I'm going to text you. You're going to get a notification. Either accept it or decline it. Coach them up. Train them how you want them to do that. And then say, if you can't make it, I need you to find yourself a sub. That's how I prefer to do it. You don't have to do it that way. If you want them to tell you about conflicts and decline and you go find their sub, that's fine. It just adds work back straight to your plate, as opposed to them finding a sub on their own and then letting you know, hey, I'm not going to be there and I got so-and-so to fill in for me. Then all your bases are covered. And so when you're building a social media team, you kind of have two prongs to it. You have your capturing or your filming of it, and then you also have your editing of it. And so you can truly have like an infinite number of volunteers. We've found for like 7 questions, draft style videos, it's good to have a camera operator. If we're doing separate microphones, it's good to have a microphone operator. We've also found it's good to have like a director, someone who's telling the people on the talent, so to speak, what they're doing. We've even found it's good to have a TV off camera that the people, so if I'm on camera playing the game, there's a TV right over there and it's keeping track of the number of questions. It's even got the scripts like on a slide for them, so it's good to have a person running that. And then last, like I said, we're in a studio, and so there are people in the hallway kind of waiting. It's good to have a host, a person out in the hallway, a person making sure that they're quiet so that when you're filming, you're not getting like the audio bleed over or whatever. So you can have up to 5 people on that week, all right? And then if you have 5 people that week and say 5 people on the week that you do drafts, and you might not need as many when you're doing Man on the Street or the other video that we're going to look at in my 4th and final installment of church social media that is done easy for you. But you can theoretically see how you can get to 10, 12, 15 different people. And then you add editors on top of that. When are they coming into the office? Do they have the gear at home? Can they edit it on something like CapCut on their app, on their phone, and then deliver that content back to you so that you can post it? Or can you even have them just in charge of the posting calendar and the posting schedule, and you can just hand those things off to it? So again, the point is the sky is the limit. If you only have 2 or 3 students who are on your team, you just have them work every week, right? Or you do these every other week, and that's when they serve, and then the off weeks that you don't have anything for social media. But as you're building your team, you need to work through that 3C framework. The calendar, how are you going to communicate it? Where are you going to print it? Where are they going to see it? How are you going to handle 1st, 3rd, 5th Sundays? How are you going to contact them? And how are you going to handle conflicts? Now, moving on to our 4th and final video in this playlist, in this strategy, we are going to link it right here on screen so you can go ahead and take a look at that 4th and final easy social media idea for churches and for youth ministries. Don't forget, we at the Hybrid Ministry Show are trying to make digital discipleship easy, possible, and accessible. So as always, don't forget to stay hybrid.